So now I feel like we're in a good spot. We've got our motors figured out with our lens. So what we can do now is, what I like to do is either I'll program the lenses as I'm taping them out. So what is taping out lenses? So taping out the lenses is one of the most important things you need to do at a camera prep. So what you're doing is, this chart that's behind me, this focus chart, is what we're going to be using to make sure that the markings on this lens line up with reality, basically, with the physical world. So we're making sure that when you set this to 2 feet 6 inches and you measure and something is 2 feet 6 inches, that thing is tack sharp. And that means these markings are accurate, because that is detrimental to your job. So the reason why we need that accuracy is because, to know that it's correct and accurate, is because when we're pulling focus, all these markings have to line up, and then the lens has to be accurate to the physical distance. So if we go 3 feet and this lines up 3 feet, but the lens is not calibrated correctly and it goes to 3.6, now your shot's way out of focus. All right, so we have to make sure that these lenses are calibrated and serviced correctly so that they actually measure to the distance that they say. So that's what we're going to start doing, and you have to do this for every single lens that you're taking on a job. All right. Oh, so good example to show what just happened here. So if you saw, the iris jumped on its own. I didn't do that. So what happens is, when you're on a prep floor, other people are prepping their cameras and they also have the same hand units. They have Prestons, or they might have the same, a WCU or High 5 or whatever. And so you might be on the same channel. So what we're going to do is, on the Preston, is we can come in here, go to Menu, go down to System, and we go Network. And so now it's going to scan all of the occupied channels. All right, so we're on 18. There's 22, 32, 45. So all of these channels are occupied. What we might do, just in case, because I got a little bit of a jump, is we'll go down a few more on the channels. All right, so let's go to we'll just go to channel 15. All right, so now we've changed it on our handset. Now we have to change it on our MDR. So to do it on the MDR, you just hold the channel button down, wait till it flashes, and then now we'll just go down to 15, and then just leave it, and it will change. So now we have focus and we have iris, and now hopefully we don't get any jumps from anybody else on the prep floor. All right, so we'll turn this back around. Oh, another thing, so once you've got this set up and then we've got our MDR turned on, you want to make sure that your motor is spinning in the right direction. So right now I just got lucky by putting these motors on that if I come close, it's going close on the marks, and if I go far, it's going far. So, and then also on the iris, we want to be wide open at the top and then close down at the bottom. And luckily, and then I just got lucky, this one's the same way as well. So if they aren't, all you have to do is come over to the MDR, and if you see at the top here, it says DIR, direction. And these red buttons will change the direction of that motor. So you can see it here, direction. So what we'll do, to change it, you just double tap that button. There, it's switched. So now the iris is going the opposite way. So if I go up, it's closing down. So if I go up, it's closing down, and then down, it's opening up. So now let's just switch it back, double tap it, and now we're back to normal. Open, closed. Cool. All right, so now I think we can get into doing our taping out our lenses. So when we're taping out our lenses, you want to measure out, basically I like to do 2 or 3 distances from the lens. And so what we want to do is, I'm going to do 15 feet, and then we'll bring the chart to 6 feet, and then we'll bring it to 3 feet. Because you need to see if the marks are consistent throughout these distances from further away and to close. So we'll do 15, 6, and 3. You can do closer. It's going to depend on the minimum focus of your lens. So if you want to do even closer, you can do closer. But on the zoom we'll probably have to do like 5 feet or something because typically zooms don't have very good close focus. We'll start at 15 and then we'll bring it in. So to measure to 15 feet, what we can do is I'll use my soft tape, I'll put it on here, and then I can run it out and I'll measure out 15. Another way is we can use our laser to measure it out. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this centered up and I'm gonna lock the pan, lock the tilt, and then I'm gonna move this monitor so that the back of the monitor is lined up with the focal plane. And now the focal plane is this mark here. So on this cage they have the mark. It's the universal signal for the sensor or the focal plane is the circle with the line through it. So this is where our focal plane is on this camera. So I'm just gonna line the back of this monitor up. Future me here, quick note, basically what I did to measure out the chart was I lined up that 7-inch onboard monitor with the focal plane of the camera. And then I was taking my disto laser and measuring from the chart and pointing the laser at the back of that monitor to get the distance. And that was basically all I was doing. So back to the prep. Okay, so I've got the back of the monitor lined up with the focal plane. So now I'm gonna walk out with my laser and we're gonna measure out 15 feet. All right, so we're at 1503. So we're a little far, so let's bring it in a few inches. 15 feet on the dot. And one thing that people do is, I don't know if you can tell here, but there's marks on the floor, and then there's also people have marked the rail up top to different lengths. So that way they're not having to remeasure every single time. Now you want to double check because you may not get it exactly right, but you don't have to like really find it each time. You can just go to that mark and then just fine tune it. So we've got our chart measured out to 15 feet. Before we go to the monitor and start finding the focus, one major thing that you absolutely have to do is when you're doing your lenses, you're taping them out, is you have to make sure that the iris is all the way open, because we need that shallowest depth of field possible on that lens so we can get the most accurate critical focus. Now that the chart's further away, that depth of field is going to be a little bit wider even though we're wide open. But once that chart gets really close, that depth of field is going to get very shallow and we'll be able to be very accurate with our focus sharpness in our measurement. Okay, so let's check out this lens. So we're at 15 feet. I'm just going to roll it in, roll it out. So like, all right, now let's roll it. Let's see, slow. So I'm looking at these circles and they get like a diamond in the middle of them, like a very tight diamond, and once it's sharp. And then it won't go any smaller, and then it'll start to go bigger as you lose the focus. So like, see, it gets small, bigger, smaller. So I feel like that's pretty good. I also want to look at these lines, especially these. When we get tighter, you'll be able to see these lines a little better, hopefully. But that's what we're using. We're using these bigger lines too to see. All right, so now I found sharpness on the monitor. So let's look. If we look here on the lens, we're like dead on to 15 feet. So this lens is good at 15 feet. So let's even like, we'll just take it away and we'll put it to 15 feet. We'll look here, like, yeah, we're sharp. Like we're right on. All right, so now let's bring it in to 6 feet. So there we are, 6 feet, dead on. All right, so now we'll check for 6 feet. All right, so now we've got a much bigger chart because we're a lot closer. So we'll roll it in nice and slow, and then we found it and then we lost it. So we'll come back and forth. I like to just go back and forth to make sure that I got it. So now we can start looking here. This is where I like to look when we get closer because those lines are very thin and very sharp. So if we can get those lines, then we'll be good. Yeah, so now if we look at the lens, 6 feet, we're dead on. So this lens is good at 6 feet. So now we'll bring it into 3 feet, and this lens should be good. It's been hitting dead on. And now we can start looking at these smaller areas on the chart to get that real fine sharpness. See, it's hard, I don't know if this is gonna come through on the video, but these lines right here, because we're so close, we can really get those lines at the end of that chart sharp. And then if we look here, we're like basically dead on. So if we put it to 3 feet, I mean, it's sharp. So yeah, so this lens is good. We don't need to send this lens back to service. Typically what I like to do is I'll throw a lens on, I'll calibrate it, program it, and then I'll tape it. But just for the purpose of this video, we're just gonna go through one process at a time. So we're gonna do the taping out of the lenses, and then I'll show you how to program in a brief way how to program the Preston. Don't worry, there's gonna be an in-depth video of how to use the Preston and to program it and all that stuff. Don't worry, but you'll get a sense of it in this video as well. So let's grab the 75 mil. So we'll throw the 75 mil up. So the great thing about these lenses and having other lenses that have uniform housing is that we don't have to move our motors out of the way to put a new lens on because they all line up the same. So what I like to do is I'll just move the focus and the aperture away from being, at infinity and wide open, so that way the gears have a little bit of wiggle room, and then I'll just line it up and it goes right on. All right, so now we'll calibrate. Just come over here, find the button, calibrate it. And now we're already at 3 feet. There's no reason to take it to 12 feet and start over. We might as well just work our way backwards. So we'll start 3 feet, we'll go 6, and then we'll go 15. Let's see how this lens does at 3 feet. Now luckily, even though it's a 75 mil, we still have really good close focus. We can go to 2.6 on this lens, so we're good at 3 feet. So we can really get in here. So that looks pretty good. Yeah, that's it right there. So if we come here and we look at our lens, it looks like we're a little off. We're off by like 1.5 inches. So let's see if and remember, we're wide open. So let's make sure that let's just double check and make sure. I might turn up the peaking a little bit so I can get a little more sharpness out of the texture of this chart. We can even see like little scratches on the chart. So they're sharp. So now if we come, yeah, see, we're still off by like 1.5 inches or 2 inches. So this lens may have to go back to service. Let's see which way it's going, if it's falling short or if it's going too far. So we'll check it out. We'll go to the other distances and see what it's doing. So now we're at 6 feet. Let's see what it does. All right, so it's pretty good at 6 feet. I mean, we're pretty much dead on here. And again, even though we're on a long lens at a 2, the depth of field at 6 feet, there's a little bit of depth to it. It's not gonna be like paper thin. So there's a little bit of a margin of error. So let's see. So I feel like this is where it should be. And it looks like it's just slightly off. So before we were off by like 1 inch, 1.5 inches. Now we're off by like maybe a couple inches. So this lens probably will have to go to service. Let's check it one more time at 15 feet. The thing about when lenses are off like this is that it's exponential. So if it's only off by like 1 inch on the short side, it could be off by much more on the long side. So you have to really make sure it's accurate all the way close and all the way far. All right, so now we're at 15 feet. So I feel like that's it right there. It looks like we're like dead on 15 feet. So we're pretty close. It looks like it's getting worse as we come close. So it looks like the worst it's off is by a couple inches, but I would highly recommend that you just send it anyway. Send it to service. This is why I like to do the lenses as soon as possible, because if you're at a place like a big rental house like Panavision, they service their lenses in-house. They have lens techs that take care of all their lenses. And so what you want to do is you want to get it to them as soon as possible, because it can take a little while to do, because they're like adjusting the lens, they're opening it up, they're adjusting it. So you want to make sure you get that to them as quickly as possible, so that like you can go to lunch and they're working on it and you come back and you have the new lens. And so we'll in theory send this one to service, but also they may, because these are Cooke S4s, they probably have other 75 mil S4s laying around that are accurate, and they could just bring us that lens right away. So it may not be a thing that you have to wait on. But if it's like a unique lens, you'll definitely have to probably wait on it. But if you're at like a small, more boutique rental house, they're not going to have lens techs that can service the lenses. So what they're going to do is they're going to have these little thin, like hair thin, some of them metal shims that will go in between the lens and the mount. And that will adjust your focus for your lens. So if the markings are off, that's the way that they're going to be able to fix those kinds of issues. But if it's something that's like majorly wrong, they're not going to be, I don't think the shims are going to do it. They're going to have to like send that lens for service and then source you another one for that prep. So that's another reason that could take a lot of time. They might have to sub it if they don't have another one in-house. So make sure, like I was saying, make sure you tape your lenses as soon as you can. It's like one of the first things I like to get out of the way, because if you do hit a wall, then you need to get it figured out as soon as possible, so you're not waiting around late in the day to get a new lens. So let's program our Preston. So I'm going to flip this back around. For the sake of the video, I'm only going to do one, because this is another one of those time-consuming parts of the prep. Like I said, the lenses take a lot of your time up. So what we'll do is we'll go to menu, we'll go down to lens, we'll go to all lenses, and we're gonna go to cook, because these are cook lenses. So we'll go to cook. They're S4s. The 18 mil is already programmed, but the 75, we're on the 75. So let's do a new lens with the focal length, 75. Next. Now I'm not going to add the serial number because it's just the one camera with the one set of lenses. If this was like a multicam job and we had multiple lenses of the same type, so if we had like 2 sets of S4s or something like that, then you would definitely want to put in your serial numbers, because if for some reason you get the other one, the markings aren't going to line up. Even though they're like the same housing and everything, the markings will not line up. So just make sure that, when you do have 2 sets, that you put the serial number in here. And if you're going to do that, you want to program both sets so that you have them already programmed in here. But we don't have to do that. So we're just going to worry about this, and we're not going to put a serial number. So I'm just going to leave it blank. So now it's in there. If we go to select it, now we can calibrate it. All right, so we've already calibrated the lenses. So make sure whenever you throw a new lens on, they calibrate it. So let's do it right now just to be safe. So we'll calibrate. Okay, so now set lens to infinity. So lens is at infinity, we'll hit next. And now we're going to go to our closest focus, so which is 2.6. So if you notice, I crouch down. So if I'm just standing up at my normal posture and I try to line this up with 2.6, that looks like 2.6. But then if I crouch down, it's a little bit off. It's not as off right now because I saw where it was before. But if in general, if you're doing this and you're like, oh, that looks pretty good, and then if you come down, you're actually off by a full line, which could be off by inches or feet if you're on the longer end or the deeper end of the lens. So I like to get myself kind of low. I like to kind of like spread my legs and crouch a little bit to kind of get my eye line level with the line, the witness line on the lens. So 2.6, and now we're going to go find 2.6 on the Preston. So 2.6, hit next. And you can just hit this to go next. You don't have to hit this to go next. So then now we'll go to the next. We get a range. So we'll go, let's go to 3 feet. That's easier. Go to 3 feet, next. Then we get more range. So we'll go to a 3.6. Next, 4 feet. Next, 5 feet. 6 feet. 8. And it needs 10 points for it to complete. So we're going to go to 12. We're going to go to 25. And then now this is the last one. So we'll just go all the way to the furthest is the best. So then we're at 120. So boom. Now the focus is calibrated. So now let's go back to our lens. We'll go to all lenses, we'll go to cook, S4, and we'll go to 75. And now we're going to edit the lens. And now we're going to calibrate the iris. So let's hit OK. So now we're going to find wide open. So it's giving us a range. So a wide open on this lens is a 2. So we're going to go to a 2, and then we'll hit next. So now we just have to find the close down. So we just go, don't just go all the way closed down. You have to find that actual mark. So we'll just get right on the mark. All right, and then we'll hit next. And then now the iris is calibrated. Because what we'll do is there's no pre-marked iris marking. So what you'll have to do is whenever you switch a lens, luckily should be pretty much the same for these, but you want to double check, is that we can just come in and then we can just find our 2, and then we'll put with a dry erase, and we'll put a 2, and then we'll come and put it here. So let's just do that now. So just to show you guys, so this lens is, we're calibrated, we're using this lens, and we can even see if we hit F show, it turns that off. We hit F show, shows you where you're at on the handset. So for right now, let's just do we'll make these iris markings. So we'll come here. We're at a 2, 22. So now, like I said, with, the different lenses, these won't line up. Or they may not, but you don't want to take the chance and keep these same markings. So what I do a lot of times, if I'm going to be doing the iris with the Preston, is I have like 1/2 inch gaff tape. And what I'll do is I'll make a strip of gaff tape, I'll put it here, and then I'll do these markings on that tape, and I'll write what lens that is, and then stick it and then put it on the on the lens case. And then make sure you tab it so you can easily rip it on and off. And then that way, you just, to line it up, you just go find your 2, and then with that tape, you'll line it up and put a 2, and then it should line up. So that's one way to do the iris. So a lot of times, just in my experience, I don't really ride iris motors that very much on this camera, unless we were going on a crane or something. Then you definitely want to ride an iris motor. But what we're going to do, the reason why we have this single channel is because a lot of DPs like to either control the iris themselves, or they like to give it to the DIT to control it, so they're looking at their monitor and they can constantly adjust the exposure. And so that's what we're going to do with the single channel. So we've got the single channel Preston, and now this one will only do focus and iris. So we're going to make sure this little switch is clicked over to iris. We've got a battery in it. We'll power on. So now we're going to make sure that we're on the right channel. So we need to change channels. We went to channel 15. So we're linked. So now we have iris control. But we could get interference from this or from the main hand unit. So what we're going to do is, so that there's no confusion between the two, a lot of times it'll tell you to override. See, if you see here, controlled by remote iris. But to be safe, sometimes it won't detect that. And so we just got to go into our menu, and then we're going to go to mode, and then we're going to hit setup. And we're going to go down to the slider, which is this is the slider. And right now, we're going to turn it off. And so now we can't accidentally bump this if they lose connection or something. And this is set to like a 16, and then all of a sudden they lose connection, and then it's going to divert back to this, and then it's going to close down the lens really quick, and it could happen in the middle of a shot. So you don't want to have this turned on here, just in case. But you definitely want to make sure that you have those markings for each one on here ready to go, because like again, if they do lose connection, maybe they're far away or their battery dies for some reason, they can't get one soon enough, you can take over and you can be like, okay, what stop are you at? And then you can turn it back on and set it to that stop. So it's always good to be fully prepared for any scenario, because systems go down and you never know when, and it always happens at the worst opportune time. So make sure you're fully prepared for that. So back to this, so if we see this ring is just blank, so what we have to do is for every single lens that we have, we're going to need one of these rings. So we have 6 primes and 1 zoom. So we're going to need 7 of these rings. And then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to put it on, and once you've calibrated it, I like to do it all at the same time, is I'll calibrate the focus of a lens, and then I'll do the iris right after. So that way I'm not throwing the lenses on, doing focus, and then starting over again and throwing all the lenses back on. That would just waste so much time. So you just want to do your focus and then do your iris. So then you would want to do your single channel. So we'll come in, we'll just do this real quick. And then also ask your, your DIT or the DP which way they like to roll the wheel to be open and closed. Some of them like different ways. So just ask them. If they don't have a preference, just do it however. I like to do, I think I like to do this way open and then this way closed. But you can do it however you like if they don't have a preference. So then you just come in and you want to do this with permanent marker on the rings. I just have my Statler. I can't find my Sharpie, but do it with permanent marker. So that way when you're fumbling around with these or they're getting handed off, the markings aren't getting erased, because then you're going to have to come back in and redo it. So just use permanent marker when you do this. It's just like on the handset. So we'll just come in 2, 2, 8, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 16, and then 22. So then also what you want to do is, so you know which lens this is, I like to just write, I just do like a line, and then I'll write, so this is the 75, so 75 mil. All right, and then again, you have to do that for all the lenses. So now that's done. So then when you're on set, you'll just hand this over to the DIT or the DP, and then they'll just do this from their monitor. And then you don't have to worry about it unless something goes wrong. All right, so that's why we have the single channel.